Dear organizers, dear conference, and dear our guests here in Hungary, it's a great attitude and an honor for me to be here and to share some theoretical background of the conference regarding architecture, as I do believe that even the part of vernacular architecture, representing the possibilities of monument protection as one of the most important, of course, in my heart here in this conference, the vernacular architecture is of this point. This is the highest quality of architecture to take care of. One of the most vulnerable, but the most important for us. Sharing all those traditional informations which we may use and we have to use in the 21st century. If you don't mind to take the schedule for finishing my lecture in time, I will read the lecture, but hope that all the quotations and the informations shared through the images will help to introduce you my opinion and my theoretical background on this topic. So, allow me to draw from the cultural heritage of the country hosting the international conference, and I welcome you here in Veszprém, the European capital of culture. In his synthesis on the intangible tradition of mankind, titled Scientia Sacra, Hungarian author, philosopher Béla Hamvas writes about the interpretation of the philosophy of ancient cultures as follows. In archaic times, knowledge of humankind was not a conceptual construction of abstract qualities, but rather personification-like and genetic. This knowledge was later called mythical. In order to understand it, one needs to know that according to archaic times, the forces of the world gathered in focal points. These focal points are centers of force, represent a heightened intensity compared to the merged capacity of human life. Human existence is dependent on the influence of visible and invisible centers of force. These centers can be cognized. However, experiencing them in neither conceptual or intellectual, but intuitive, mystical, and direct. The Greeks used the word theoria to denote this direct, intuitive vision, which meant the vision of ideas and of God. In my view, the folk architecture interprets an idea and an opportunity to see God. It marks the place and perpetuates a spirit. Physically, it is a material, structure, and function, but in association of substance, in the shaping of structure, in linking of spaces, it reveals its own age. The idea of the time of construction appears through it. The tradition of real history and the spirit of the age are revealed to us even after centuries. But there is no permanency in the transmitted picture. The material extracted from nature by man for construction is by its very nature slowly disappearing. In the shaping of structure, the rationality of knowledge and experience leads to progress. In the shaping of functions, the desire for innovation of human creativity, nature produce more sophisticated compositions. However, behind the changes lies a natural permanency that shows the careful observer a building culture specific to the landscape and climate, to a particular society. Culture cannot be inherited. Ancestral traditions disappear rapidly unless each generation reconquers them for itself. Zoltán Kodály, Hungarian scholar of folk music, composer, creator of modern music and education, told us. Their folk music collecting work, which they started together with Béla Bartók at the beginning of the 20th century, recognized the importance of the movement that the changes that occurred in the last decades of the 19th century, and created a solid basis for understanding the links between Hungarian folk music of the Carpathian Basin and the music culture of the surrounding peoples and nations. In his words, he should pay attention to the time horizon. He sees continuity as ensured through a living relationship between generations. In less than a lifetime, sociologists are already detecting fundamental changes in folk culture between the two world wars. The forms of farming changed with the modernization and mechanization. But ethnography can then record the characteristics of a culture that can still be called inform in a changing environment. At the same time, folk architecture is also becoming a focus of cultural policy. Researchers seek the foundation for the creation of national architecture. An example of this in Hungary is the Association of Friends of Hungarian House, led by Jenő Padányi Gulyás. But let us think of the Casa Portuguesa movement at the other end of Europe, which takes us in time to the mid-20th century. The Portuguese research creates a basis for the possible cultural continuity of modern architecture, similar to the regional efforts of the 1940s, mostly occurred in the Mediterranean countries, naturally applying vernacular architecture traditions as an alternative to the spreading international modern movement. The idea of regionalism shows the current architectural themes in the use of the local character, as is well illustrated by the concept of the exhibition catalogue of Bernard Rudowski, well known among architects, but it would lead us to another theoretical issue, more widened than I should introduce today. With the socio-political changes following the Second World War, a drastic process took place in the eastern half of Europe. With the nationalization of land, farming was brought under central control, gradually eroding the traditional peasant culture. In addition to the general intensification of modernization, this led to the transformation of the built spaces of individual farming, the use of traditional farm buildings, and ultimately to disintegration of village communities. The opening lines of the book, entitled Architecture of the Hungarian Village, published in 1955, well illustrates the situation at that time. The closer acquaintance with the architecture of the Hungarian village, its study and the appraisal of its values nowadays goes beyond the scope of the science. In the past, the village was of interest to intellectuals primarily in ethnographic terms within the framework of the individual disciplines. And it was the sociographic approach to village research that became of more general value alongside the regular and occasional tourist attractions. The sense of duty and appreciation for the values of traditional folk architecture led to the decision that it was necessary to deal with the architecture of the Hungarian village directly and practically. It was in 1955, don't forget. This was the impetus some years ago for a closer on-site study, architecture investigation, and technical survey of village architecture. Partly on the basis of the results of previous collections and researches, we have gathered architectural traditions, vernacular architectural legacies, the direct use of which, even if they may not always be timely and of particular value, we will still believe that it would be desirable if their knowledge could awaken new ideas in all those who are involved in the planning works of the village. At the same time, we would like to draw the attention of the people of the village to those values that surround their everyday life, which are of outstanding importance in the traditional architecture of the village, not only in the terms of local folk architecture, but also in the terms of more general, more comprehensive national architecture. The published pictorial material thus clearly reveals more than one aspect of the folk building activity, which varies and distributes according to the landscape, but is nevertheless in many cases uniform and identical. The material mastery and structural knowledge of the village builders, their editing and shaping skills, all this, of course, is less relevant to the circumstances of our life today, considering the rapid changes, evolution, and development of our times. Yet, given to the specific nature and undoubted importance of these historical and architectural artistic values, we believe that their disappearance and slow extinction would be a serious loss to national and general human culture. End of quotation from 1955. They are recently very important words, I believe. Still they are. Even if the apocalyptic nature of the vision didn't occur, the foundations of a work culture with personal ties disappeared. As a result of a general modernization, the population structure of the village also changed drastically. The living tradition of folk culture, including architecture, has lost its natural base over a lifetime. However, not completely. The last sentences of the quote seek the means of natural adaptation, the possible alternatives for its survival. The conscious preservation of intangible cultural heritage could be ensured through the means of public education, whose most successful initiative had become the Tanzhaus, so-called, not a nice of translation, but dance house or dance hall, dance house movement linked to folk music. Closely linked to this is folk tourism, which over time has drawn attention back to the rural regions, creating a demand for the renewal of heritage that hasn't been destroyed over decades. At the same time, the real renewal of folk architecture was brought about by the change in agricultural culture and the re-establishment of traditional family farms. The building stock has been put back into use. Feed in a storage, machinery in the barns, and well-established buildings are still in the use at the level of the backyard animal husbandry. Fortunately, this renewal could be achieved with a generation, thus the building skills still known in the last decades of the 20th century and practiced by elder masters could be preserved, providing a basis for survival, not only for the traditional architecture, but possibility for renewing contemporary architecture, really concentrated and connected to the climate and the traditions of building, tradition of construction. Preserving of the living heritage can be achieved along two objectives. On the one hand, by helping to maintain family farms and farming communities, and on the other hand, by using heritage assets in a new and modern ways. The direct effect of the first instrument is the natural continued use of the existing building stock. In the latter, the word modernity doesn't generate oblivion here either. In the practice of careful conservation of built heritage, even a change of function can lead us to results. Today, more and more of us believe that natural building methods and the use of natural materials are values. By rediscovering local materials and technologies, the practice of low-impact construction can be re-established, which can be used to renew the existing building stock, and the remaining assets can be cared further. A kind of renaissance of this, even in Hungary, is the practice of community buildings. Allow me to share with the participants of the conference our experiences on the results of a 6-year program of the last years in a few thoughts. The Folk Architecture Program, launched in 2017 by the Hungarian government, provides support for the restoration of vernacular architecture monuments and rural built heritage of monument values in order to protect, conserve, and maintain them. In addition to its primary objective, it supports the renewal of the existing historic assets of the ensemble under territorial protection through the renovation of individual monuments by contributing to the restoration of village stains that bear the folk architectural characteristics of the landscape units. The support in the form of grant, including co-payment, is accompanied from the outset by personalized professional advice. The professionals of the regional mentoring network provide direct support to the building owners from the initial steps of value identification through the planning, implementation, and construction processes. Over 6 years, around 800 sites have undergone partial and complete conservation renewal. Through the targeted support scheme, the revival of traditional building techniques are ensured, which increase the number of small-scale craft practitioners, realizes professional knowledge transfer thanks to the increasing number of jobs, but also results in the rebuilding of the local network of traders in natural building materials. So very complexity showed in this process. The above objectives can be achieved through the exploration and demonstration of values, and can be realized through self-sacrificing work based on careful preparation and a value-based approach. Those who embrace the values of vernacular architecture with personal conviction are committed to this work as academic researchers, creative designers, professionals contributing their technical knowledge, craftsmen, and contractors. And last but not least, as an owner, because the professional work and the sustainability of natural building knowledge depend first and foremost on the respectful approach to traditional values. The words of ethnographer László Varga are about this naturalness, which are both admiring and insightful. So, folk architecture. The decoration grew out of the material and structure. It avoids using too much color, excessive decoration, and what gets put up it's limited to particular places. The roofing thatching techniques, it's simultaneously decorative, forming whole figures for the heaping of the roof, carving only the ends of the beams, and the ornate cuts out in the gable and also serve for lighting. The stilted hedge wave. Houses preserve such structural peculiarity of the assembly that may inspire fertile ideas in today's prefabrication. Built with a roof that suited the climate and the materials used. The porch is a lovely adobe and workplace, a transition to the natural world around the home, but also a place to shake off rain and mud. In the design of porches, true architectural conception is demonstrated. Ancient memories live on inside, and the furniture is placed along the walls in Europe, in Hungary, giving the room a spacious interior. People sit around the table, set in the middle of the room, as they once surrounded the fire that blazed in the middle in the tent. This naturality, this commitment carries on the tradition of folk architecture. The knowledge of materials, the logic of the structure, the methods of shaping provide a solid basis for a familiar, modern, yet natural construction that is close to us. Folk architecture is the most natural source of our own local culture, of our contemporary culture. Continuity is ensured by the knowledge carried out through generations. Thank you for your attention.